Significant weather developments across multiple parts of Australia, a developing tropical low off the Western Australian coast, severe thunderstorm activity building across Queensland, and a heat trough setting up shop across the eastern states. That is what we are looking at over the next 5 to 7 days. I've examined the latest data from the Bureau of Meteorology, run through the model guidance from Access, GFS and the European model, and there are some important details you need to know about, particularly if you worry in Western Australia, Queensland or anywhere across the eastern seaboard. Let S start with what is happening right now, then work through the timeline and regional impacts. Western Australia has a tropical low developing in the Indian Ocean, roughly 500 kilometres northwest of Broome. Current central pressure is sitting at 1,004 hectopascals. That S reasonably low but not alarming yet. Sea surface temperatures in that region are running 29 to 30 degrees Celsius, warm enough to support development if the atmospheric conditions line up properly. The Access model and the European model are showing different solutions for this system. Access has it intensifying to 995 hectopascals by Sunday, then tracking southeast toward the Pilbara coast. The European model is less aggressive, keeping it around 1,000 hectopascals and steering it more westerly, potentially keeping it offshore. When you see model disagreement like this, it tells you something important. The upper level steering currents aren't locked in yet. There is a ridge of high pressure to the south that's going to play a major role in determining the track. If that ridge strengthens and shifts east, the low gets pushed toward the coast. If the ridge weakens or stays put, the low could recurve back out to sea. For those in the Kimberley and Pilbara regions, here S, where you need to pay attention. Regardless of whether this system makes landfall or stays offshore, the moisture feed is going to impact you. We're re-looking at widespread rainfall totals of 50 to 100 millimetres across the Kimberley from Friday through Sunday. Some areas could see 150 millimetres if thunderstorm activity gets going properly. The Pilbara is trickier. If the low tracks on shore near Karratha or Port Hedland, you are looking at 150 to 250 millimetres over a 24 to 48 hour period. That is significant rain for that part of the country. Creek crossings will go under, road access will be cut. If you've got travel plans through that region this weekend, you will want to reconsider or at least have contingency plans. Wind is the other concern. If this system intensifies, as Access suggests, coastal areas could see sustained winds of 60 to 80 kilometres per hour with gusts to 100 kilometres per hour. That S not cyclone strength, but at S enough to cause damage to infrastructure, particularly in remote areas where maintenance can be sporadic. Secure loose items around properties. Check that equipment is tied down properly. The interesting bit about this system is the timing with the monsoon trough. The tropical low is developing along an active monsoon trough that S been sitting across northern Australia for the past week. That trough is pumping moisture right across the top end and into the Kimberley. Darwin S been sitting at 35 degrees with humidity making it feel closer to 40. Typical build-up conditions, but particularly intense this year. Now let S shift focus to Queensland because there's a separate situation developing there that deserves your attention. A surface trough is setting up across inland Queensland, running roughly north to south from the Gulf country down through the Channel country. At the same time, there is an upper level trough moving across from the west. When these two features interact, you get enhanced lift in the atmosphere. That is the setup for severe thunderstorm development. The Bureau of Meteorology has issued severe thunderstorm warnings for large parts of central and southern Queensland. These aren't generic warnings. They rebased on very specific atmospheric conditions that we are seeing right now. The key ingredients are all there. You've got instability with Cape values running between 2,000 and 3,000 joules per kilogram across inland Queensland. That S significant energy available for thunderstorm development. You've got wind shear with the upper level westerlies clashing with surface easterlies. And you've got a trigger mechanism with the surface trough providing the lift. What does that mean in practical terms? Severe thunderstorms are likely across the Darling Downs, Maranoa and Western Downs districts from this afternoon through Friday. We are talking about storms capable of producing giant hail, damaging winds and intense rainfall rates. Brisbane and the southeast coast are in a different situation. You've been dealing with heat and humidity all week. 38 degrees yesterday with humidity making it feel even worse. That changes tonight when a southeasterly change pushes through. Temperatures drop back to the high 20s, but the muggy conditions stick around until the weekend. The Gold Coast and Sunshine Coast see the change a bit earlier, late this afternoon into tonight. Sea breezes have been providing some relief during the day, but overnight minimums have been uncomfortable. 24 to 26 degrees overnight. Hard to sleep in that. The change brings overnight minimums back down to around 20 degrees by Friday night. That feel like a relief. For those asking about storm season on the Gold Coast, it's not over yet. We typically see storm activity right through to March, sometimes into April. This current active pattern could produce several more significant events before the season winds down. Don T put away the emergency kit just yet. Inland Queensland, particularly around Roma, Charleville and out toward Cunnamulla, you are in the firing line for severe storms Thursday afternoon and Friday. These are the areas where supercell development is most likely. If you're out on the land, moving stock or doing work that puts you away from shelter, keep a very close eye on the sky and have the bomb warnings turned on. Hail is a real concern with these storms. We could see hailstones 5 centimetres or larger. That's enough to damage crops, kill stock and write off vehicles. If you've got equipment out in the paddocks, consider moving it under cover if that's practical. At minimum, make sure you know where your shelter is if you record out. North Queensland is in a holding pattern. Townsville and Cairns are sitting in warm, humid conditions, but without the trigger mechanisms for significant storm development. That changes early next week when the tropical low in the west starts to influence the broader pattern. We could see increased shower and storm activity across far north Queensland from Monday onward. Now let's talk about the heat trough across the eastern states, because this is the feature that is going to dominate the weather across New South Wales, Victoria and South Australia over the next few days. A heat trough is basically an elongated area of low pressure that forms in response to intense heating over land. You get one side with hot, dry continental air and the other side with cooler, more humid air. When these air masses clash along the trough line, you get weather. This particular heat trough is setting up along the western slopes of New South Wales and is expected to remain quasi-stationary through Friday. That means the hot conditions continue for inland New South Wales. Dubbo, Orange, Bathurst, Uree looking at temperatures in the mid to high 30s through Friday. Overnight minimums staying in the low 20s. Sydney S on the eastern side of the trough, which means you are getting the easterly flow off the Tasman. That S keeping temperatures slightly more moderate, but the humidity is the killer. Daytime maximums around 30 to 32 degrees, but with dew points in the low 20s, it feels significantly hotter. The apparent temperature, what it actually feels like, is closer to 36 to 38 degrees. That humidity is causing issues. People have been crook for weeks across the eastern states. Flu, sinus problems, headaches. When you get these persistent humid conditions combined with temperature fluctuations, it puts stress on the body. If you're not feeling well, Don, to push through it. Stay hydrated, get rest, and see a doctor if symptoms persist. The Central Coast and Hunter Valley are copping similar conditions to Sydney. Newcastle hit 32 degrees yesterday with high humidity. That pattern continues through Friday. Then we see a change moving through on Saturday. That change is important. A cold front is going to sweep up from the south Saturday morning, reaching the Hunter by Saturday afternoon. When it comes through, temperatures will drop 5 to 8 degrees within a couple of hours. Winds will swing around to the southwest, gusting to 60 kilometres per hour. If you've got outdoor plans Saturday, be prepared for that sudden change. Victoria S already feeling cooler air. Melbourne's been sitting around 24 to 26 degrees this week, actually quite pleasant while everyone else either bakes or sweats. That pleasant weather continues through Thursday, then Friday brings a return to warmer conditions ahead of the next frontal system. The interesting part about Victoria is the northern districts, Mildura, Swan Hill, Echuca. You're on the northern side of the frontal systems, which means you are getting the hot northerly flow. Temperatures have been running in the mid-30s all week. That continues through Friday, then the change brings a 15-degree temperature drop on Saturday. Those rapid temperature changes are hard on the body, particularly if you're older or have existing health conditions. Make sure you're looking after yourself. Check on mates who might be doing it tough. A quick phone call can make a big difference. South Australia is in a transitional pattern. Adelaide has been beautiful this week, 24 degrees and sunny, but that changes Friday into Saturday when a trough moves through from the west. Temperatures jump to the low 30s Friday, then drop back to the low 20s Saturday as the change comes through. The concern for South Australia is the dry conditions. You've had bugger all rain for 3 months. Dams are getting low, paddocks are struggling. This frontal system has the potential to bring rain, but the models are showing light totals, maybe 10 to 20 millimetres across the agricultural districts. Better than nothing, but not drought breaking. For those in the Adelaide Hills and Fleurieu Peninsula, fire danger is elevated Friday ahead of the change. Hot, dry and windy conditions. Not catastrophic, but worth being careful. No outdoor fires, watch for sparks from machinery and have your fire plan ready just in case. Tasmania's been in the cold air all week. Hobart saw -2 degrees this morning. Frost across the northern suburbs. That's not unusual for this time of year, but it's a reminder that winter's not far off. The cold pool sitting over Tasmania moderates slightly through the weekend, but you are still looking at overnight minimums around 0 to 2 degrees inland, 4 to 6 degrees on the coast. For those with livestock in Tasmania, make sure they've got adequate shelter. Lambing season is underway in some areas, and these cold nights can be hard on newborns. Check water troughs under freezing over. Basic stuff, but it matters. The alpine regions across New South Wales and Victoria are seeing excellent snow conditions. Thredbo, Perisher, Falls Creek, Mount Hotham, UV all had good snow over the past week. That continues through the weekend with another 20 to 40 centimetres expected above 1,800 metres. If you are heading to the snow, road conditions are good, but carry chains regardless. Weather in the mountains can change quickly. Now let's talk about rainfall more broadly, because there's an interesting pattern developing across the continent. Western Australia, particularly the Kimberley and Pilbara, could see widespread totals of 100 to 200 millimetres from the tropical low system. That is significant rain, but it's worth keeping in perspective. During the wet season, these areas can handle large rainfall totals. The infrastructure is generally designed for it. The concern is more about isolated areas, remote communities, and road access. Queensland's rainfall is more scattered. The severe thunderstorms will produce locally heavy falls, but they hit and miss. One property might get 100 millimetres in an hour, while 5 kilometres away gets nothing. That's the nature of severe thunderstorm activity. Can it predict exactly where the heaviest rain will fall? But we know the environment is primed for it. New South Wales and Victoria see light rainfall from the frontal systems, maybe 5 to 15 millimetres along the coast, less than 5 millimetres inland. Not significant, but it'll settle the dust and give the gardens a drink. South Australia and Tasmania stay mostly dry through this period. A few showers possible in Tasmania's west coast, but generally dry conditions continue. One question that comes up regularly is about cyclone development. The tropical low in Western Australia has the potential to develop into a tropical cyclone if conditions remain favourable. For it to reach cyclone strength, we need the central pressure to drop below 1,000 hectopascals and the system to develop a clear circulation with sustained winds above 63 kilometres per hour. Right now, the system S not there yet. It's got the warm water, but the upper level winds are creating too much shear. That shear disrupts the development of the circulation. If that shear relaxes over the next 24 to 48 hours, we could see rapid intensification. That's something to watch closely. The Joint Typhoon Warning Centre and the Bureau of Meteorology are both monitoring this system. If it does develop into a cyclone, it would likely be named Genesis. Cyclone naming follows a predetermined list, and Genesis is next on the list for the Australian region. For those in Western Australia, particularly in remote areas, now is the time to make sure you re-prepared. Stock up on essentials. Fuel for generators, food that doesn't require refrigeration, water, batteries, first aid supplies. Not trying to create panic, but if this system does intensify and impact the coast, you could be isolated for several days. Cyclone preparedness is something many of you know well. If you've ever been through Tracy, Larry, Yassi, you know what S involved. For those who haven't experienced a cyclone, listen to those who have. Secure everything that could become a projectile in strong winds. Loose furniture, trampolines, tools, building materials. If it's not tied down, it's a weapon in a cyclone. Looking ahead to next week, the pattern remains active. The tropical low system, regardless of whether it intensifies, will eventually move into the interior and weaken. But the moisture it drags south could interact with frontal systems moving across the southern states. That sets up potential for significant rainfall across inland Australia early next week. The heat trough across the eastern states breaks down over the weekend, but another one is likely to form mid next week. That means the hot, humid conditions return for New South Wales and Queensland. Bit of a pattern we restuck in at the moment. For those watching long-range forecasts, the models are showing an increased chance of above-average rainfall across northern and eastern Australia through the next fortnight. That is driven by an active monsoon trough and favourable conditions in the Indian Ocean. The Indian Ocean dipole is in a neutral phase, which generally supports better rainfall across Australia. El Niño conditions have eased, which is good news for rainfall prospects. We're moving toward neutral conditions in the Pacific, with some indication we might shift to La Niña later in the year. Too early to make definitive calls on that, but it's worth monitoring. Practically speaking, what do you need to do? That depends on where you are and what your situation is. Western Australia, Kimberley and Pilbara. Monitor the Bureau of Meteorology warnings closely. If you are in remote areas, make sure your communication equipment is working, satellite phones, UHF radios, whatever you've got. Let someone know your plans and stick to them. If you are planning to travel, reconsider or delay. If you must travel, make sure your vehicle is properly equipped and you've got contingency plans. Queensland, particularly inland, severe thunderstorms are likely. If you hear thunder, you are close enough to be struck by lightning. Get indoors or into a hard-topped vehicle. Don T shelter under trees. Move stock away from exposed areas if practical. Secure equipment and be prepared for large hail and damaging winds. Southeast Queensland, Brisbane, Gold Coast, Sunshine Coast. The heat and humidity ease over the weekend, but storm activity remains possible. Keep an eye on warnings, particularly if you are already planning outdoor activities. Beach conditions are reasonable through the weekend, but we could see increased swell early next week from the tropical low in the west. New South Wales, the heat continues through Friday, then the change brings relief Saturday. That temperature drop is sudden, so be prepared. If you're reworking outdoors, adjust your plans accordingly. The cool change brings wind, possibly strong enough to cause issues for high-sided vehicles on exposed roads. Victoria. Pleasant conditions through Thursday give way to a warm day Friday, then the change Saturday. Similar to New South Wales, be ready for that temperature swing. Alpine areas see good snow, excellent for skiing if that is your thing. South Australia, fire danger Friday, particularly in the Adelaide Hills and across the agricultural districts. Be careful with any activities that could spark a fire. The rain from the frontal system is light, not enough to significantly ease the dry conditions. Tasmania, cold conditions continue. Protect vulnerable plants, check livestock, and if you're re-heading to higher elevations, be prepared for snow and ice. One other thing worth mentioning, we're re-seeing increased reports of flu and respiratory illness across the eastern states. That partly due to the weather pattern we've been in. Warm, humid conditions one day, cooler the next, then back to warm again. Your body doesn't get a chance to adjust properly. If you are feeling unwell, don't to push through it. Rest up, stay hydrated and seek medical attention if needed. For those with respiratory conditions, asthma or other health issues exacerbated by weather, be extra careful. Have your medications handy. Know your triggers. The humidity and rapid temperature changes can cause flare-ups. This weather pattern we're in is active, but it's not unprecedented. We see similar setups most years during the transition from summer to autumn. Tropical systems in the north, frontal activity in the south, and everything clashing in the middle. It makes for interesting weather, but it's manageable if you are prepared and paying attention. The key is staying informed. Check the Bureau of Meteorology website regularly. They update forecasts and warnings as conditions change. Don T rely on a forecast from 3 days ago. Weather is dynamic, particularly in an active pattern like this. If you see something that doesn't match the forecast, report it. The Bureau relies on observations from the public, particularly in remote areas. If you are seeing severe weather developing, let them know. It helps them refine warnings and could help someone else make better decisions. Looking at the bigger picture, this weather pattern is likely to persist for at least another week, possibly 2. We are not seeing any significant pattern changes in the extended models. That means continued potential for tropical development in the north, active thunderstorm activity across Queensland, and frontal systems moving through the southern states. For those in agriculture, this is a mixed bag. The rain in Western Australia and parts of Queensland is welcome, but it is coming with severe weather risks. The dry conditions across South Australia and parts of New South Wales continue. Not ideal, but we work with what we get. Water storage levels across the eastern states are reasonable after the wet conditions over the past couple of years. But localised dry spells are developing in some areas. If you're in one of those areas, water conservation makes sense. Not panicking, just being sensible about usage. Fire season is winding down across the southern states, but we're not out of the woods yet. March can still produce significant fire weather days, particularly if we get a hot, dry, windy pattern setting up. Keep your fire plans current. Don T, let your guard down just because summer is nearly over. Coastal conditions across most of Australia are reasonable through the weekend. Some increased swell along the Western Australian coast from the tropical low, but nothing extreme. New South Wales and Queensland beaches see moderate swell, good for surfing, but pay attention to rip currents, particularly after the recent full moon when tides are larger. Marine weather across northern Australia requires attention. If you're on the water around the Kimberley or Pilbara, that tropical low is a concern. Seas are already running 2 to 3 metres in the development area, potentially building to 4 to 5 metres as the system intensifies. Small craft should stay in port. Larger vessels need to monitor warnings and be prepared to seek shelter if conditions deteriorate. For those in the commercial fishing industry, this could be a lost week depending on where you operate. Not much you can do about it, but factor it into your planning. That's the comprehensive picture of what is happening across Australia over the next 5 to 7 days. A developing tropical low in the west, severe thunderstorms across Queensland, heat and humidity across the eastern states, and frontal activity bringing cooler changes to the south. It's an active pattern, but it's not cause for panic. Be prepared, stay informed, and use common sense. If you're in an area likely to be impacted by severe weather, have your plans ready. If you're not sure whether you are in a risk area, check the Bureau of Meteorology warnings. The data IV presented comes from the latest Bureau of Meteorology analysis, multiple weather models including ACCESS, GFS, and ECMWF, and current observations from stations across the country. Forecast confidence is reasonable for the next 3 days, moderate for days 4 and 5, and lower for the extended period beyond that. Weather forecasting isn't perfect. Models change, systems behave unexpectedly, and local conditions can vary significantly from the broader forecast. That S important to stay updated rather than relying on a single forecast. For detailed location-specific information, the Bureau of Meteorology website is your best resource. They provide forecasts down to the district level, warnings for severe weather, and observations from stations across the country. It's free, it's reliable, and it's updated regularly. Keep an eye on conditions, look after yourselves and your mates, and don't take unnecessary risks. If the weather looks dodgy, it probably is. Trust your judgment